All right, guys, welcome to Flav Orellana's MMA show. I'm your host, Flav Orellana. Well, I'm brought to you by Four Corner Sports. Wow, guys, yesterday we had UFC Fight Night Vegas 11, headlined by Colby Covington versus Tyron Woodley in the main event. And what a card. I mean, top to bottom, you had great fights. It was one of the better fight nights of the year. I mean, it was projected to be, one of the best fight nights of all time. But wow, let's get to this. All right. So yesterday we had our main event: Colby Chaos Covington versus Tyron, the Chosen One, Woodley. These two hate each other. Still hate each other. This fight could have been a lot bigger than what it was if the UFC actually marketed a little bit better. You have Colby Covington, supported by Donald Trump supporter. What's it called? One of the best welterweights in the world. Coming off of a loss against Kamaru Usman, which that fight was incredible, right? I told you guys, watch that fight. That fight was insane. That was a great fight. Kamaru Usman versus Colby Covington back in December. And then you have Tyron Woodley, who has been coming off of two really bad losses versus Kamaru Usman, which he had lost the title, and Gilbert Burns, who he had recently fought May 30th. Lost all 5 rounds in each of those fights. So a combined total of 10 rounds that he lost. Almost a full hour of losing in the octagon, 50 minutes of it, if you want to be exact. Tyron Woodley was a mentor towards Colby Covington. Trained him, paid him, said he paid him about $500 a week to spar with him when Colby was up and coming. Colby Covington, 2.5 years ago, was calling him out, wanted to fight him for the belt. It was like built-in pressure. They had tried to schedule these two to fight numerous times in the past. Didn't happen. Now, 2020, they had scheduled to fight. Yesterday we had the fight. I thought that it was going to go similar to how Usman and Covington had ended up, by them trading blows, swinging at one another. That wasn't the case. It was more or less Colby Covington, bringing up a high pace, kinetic, a high pace energy, pressuring him, making sure that Woodley's back is always, pretty much against the cage or near the cage. Wrestling, ground and pound, and Woodley did not win not one single round last night. Was I surprised? A little bit. Somebody that's 38 right now, I just feel like normally I would say that, he should probably fight one more time. But the way that Tyron Woodley ended up losing yesterday, I'm not going to even say the rib injury. Yes, he had a rib injury that forced him to stop the fight. But even without the rib injury, he was still going to lose. And what I saw from Tyron Woodley compared to what I saw to Colby Covington looked like a brand new person, a brand new fighter, right? He looks like he's a giant chip on his shoulder. He looks like he's determined to, have another rematch with Kamaru Usman and take the title from him and to prove to everybody in the world that, he's the best welterweight in the world. Tyron Woodley, on the other hand, it just seems like he has so many distractions in his head, his rapping career, him doing music videos or whatever it is. And it just seems like it's everything outside of just wanting to fight. And that's fine. But fighting's a dangerous sport. Getting inside that octagon with another person who's highly skilled is very, very dangerous. If your mind is not fully set in there, don't get inside there. I advise you not to fight. Seeing him get dominated is no fun at all. I mean, I like Tyron Woodley. I have nothing against the guy. But I honestly feel like it's maybe time for him to hang it up and then focus on whatever he wants to do. Colby Covington, on the other hand, is highly motivated and he wants to just dominate. He wants to dominate. He dominated Robbie Lawler, dominated RDA, dominated Tyron Woodley. right? That Kamaru Usman fight that he had back in December, I had it. I believe, I don't know how I scored it. I don't know if it was 2-2 going into the 5th round or 3-1 Covington. But yeah, it was one of those things where it's like, if Covington could have, made it to the decision with Usman, who knows what would have ended up happening with Usman and Covington that night. But we will never know, because Usman ended up taking care of business and getting the fight stopped by a TKO. Covington had a broken jaw. Fight was stopped. You might end up seeing the rematch, depending if Usman ends up beating Burns in December 12th. But yeah, I said it before in that last episode that Woodley had the most to lose. Dana White wasn't very pleased with that. He feels like Woodley is very distracted. He wants to do everything other than fight. May need to hang it up. I don't want to see Woodley being put out there against prospects that are trying to make a name out of themselves and need to get a big win over a legend or anything like that. In my opinion, I feel like Tyron Woodley is right now the second best welterweight. Yes, I said it, the second best welterweight, and there's nothing to be ashamed about, because the best welterweight of all time is none other than GSP, George St. Pierre. Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen with Woodley, but with Covington, you have tons of options. If he doesn't get a title shot with Usman or Burns, if he ends up winning, then you have the possibility of having him fight Jorge Maswell. Now, Jorge Maswell and Colby Covington used to be roommates, used to be best of friends. That's no longer the case at all. Could be great storyline. The UFC could market the crap out of that thing. Maswell doesn't seem like the type to want to fight on a fight night. He looks like the type that he wants to only headline a pay-per-view. They could put the BMF title, up for that fight. That'd be very interesting. Or you could have Covington fight, Leon Edwards, which that seems like the least of possible fights that are most likely to happen outside of the three that I ended up mentioning. Because Leon Edwards, for some reason, he has a hard time trying to get into the U.S. I think that the UK keeps on denying his visa for whatever reason it is. I have no idea. But Leon Edwards doesn't draw enough fans. If he fights somebody like Colby Covington, it kind of would raise up his popularity. But I think the fans would want to see only 2 fights. If Usman wins, the fight between Usman and Covington, or Covington versus Masvidal. Those are the only 2 fights I think the fans want to see. Those are the only 2 fights that I want to see. Now, if Burns wins, does Covington fight Burns? Who knows? Maybe. I just don't see the UFC end up doing something like that. Just only because of the fact that they might bring in somebody else. Maybe it might be Burns and Edwards that might make some noise or whatever. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see in December for that. But co-main event, I predicted it to be fight night. There is no fight night for this UFC fight night at all. There was no fight night. Bonuses given out at all. There was only 4 performances of the nights, and neither one of these fighters ended up getting it. So Nico Price versus Donald Cowboy Cerrone. You got 2 crazy ass men in the ring. Nico Price is one of the craziest men I've seen. Happy, super energetic. This guy looks like if you give this guy coffee, this guy looked like he would be going on like 36 hours straight with no sleep at all. He looks like he's like always on some type of a sugar rush. Donald Cowboy Cerrone, one of the legends of the sport, has like the most performances of the nights and other stuff like that. I think he has like the lead in most UFC wins. If it's not him, then it's Jim Miller. This guy's been around for quite some time. But round 1, Nico Price and Donald Cerrone going at it, and I'm thinking, oh wow, first 30 seconds, Nico Price looks like he's about to have a knockout. And I'm like, why are they even scheduling Cowboy at this point? Cowboy ends up surviving that first round. It was just like elbows, what's it called? 1-2 punch combinations, hooks, uppercuts, and I'm like, this guy's getting as red as like a chili pepper or something like that. Cowboy just looked like he was about to be knocked out, looked like he was about to be done. And it was like, go figure. Anytime I see Cowboy fight, I always feel like he's always losing or anything like that, unless he's facing some type of a scrub or, extremely young prospect that looks like they're not ready to fight, that type of talent yet. Cowboy, this is his first appearance since he lost to Conor McGregor. He has also lost to Justin Gaethje, Tony Ferguson. And it's just like, Cowboy has, and he also lost to Jorge Maswell too. So he has lost to the elite of the elite. I felt like this fight was taking place because of the fact that they wanted to push up Nico Price in the welterweight division. If he got a big win off of Donald Cowboy or Cerrone, then we're talking, this guy could fight, further up in the rankings. Round 2, you have Nico Price throwing more volume of punches, but I felt like things got delayed because of the eye pokes. Ended up poking Donald Cowboy Cerrone. Time was called. Jason Herzog ended up telling Nico that he needs to cut it out. A few minutes later, does it again, accidental. He screams, "Oh crap, my bad." And it was one of those things like, Herzog was like, "All right, I've already warned you once. I have to deduct a point." Deducted a point. And I'm sorry, this all happened in round 1. I'm so sorry about that. Herzog ended up deducting a point in round 1. Round 2 was more of a continuation of eye pokes. And, Nico Price just threw more punches than Cowboy Cerrone. Cowboy Cerrone just looked like he was about to, lose another fight. Round 3, Cowboy Cerrone had more of the had more of the upper edge. I'm sorry for that stutter. And ended up jumping on top of Nico Price's back. Looked like at one point he tried to go for like a rear naked chokehold. Then Nico Price, as weird as he is, ends up throwing, what's it called, shots to the face, punching, Cerrone as Cerrone's on top of him. And it was just like one of those weird, bizarre fights that I thought could have been fight of the night. Didn't happen to be fight of the night. And when the scorecards came out, one judge had Cowboy winning 29-27. That means Cowboy would have won 2 rounds to 1, which I did not have that at all. I felt like Nico won 2 rounds out of the 1. And then the other 2 judges ended up scoring at 28-28. And with that being said, that was the majority draw. Now, Nico Price just cost himself a lot of money because of those eye pokes. And those eye pokes, who knows how much money he would have made. And yeah, now both of them have a draw. That stops Donald Cowboy Cerrone's losing streak. So that's kind of a plus. Cowboy ended up saying that he felt like he lost his fight, in which in technicality, he kind of did lose his fight. If you really want to think about it like that, if it wasn't for the eye pokes, he would have lost his 5th straight fight or 6th straight fight, whatever it is. So, I don't know what's going to happen with Donald Cowboy Cerrone. I think he should hang it up. He says he's going to be less active moving forward. Dana White said that he's going to have a conversation with him. He knows it's going to kill Cowboy. Me personally, I want to see Cowboy retire. Him being in his late 30s, it looks like he's already punch drunk at this point. He's always getting hurt. He's always getting hit bad. Doesn't have the same reflexes like what he used to have. This is a young man sport. Nico Price isn't, I think he's like 30. If I'm not mistaken, sorry for that. I didn't mean to move the camera. I believe Nico Price is like 30, 31. And Cowboy's already in his late 30s, like 38, 39. Cowboy's been in the game for such a long time. He's endured so much damage. In his last, couple fights, he's endured so much damage with Justin Gaethje and Tony Ferguson. Lost to McGregor in 40 seconds, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it's time to hang it up, Cowboy. I'm sorry. I mean, I know that you fight and you put a lot of your money into your racetrack or whatever it is, or your horses, all these like stuff that you're really into, but I feel like time is running out, and soon enough, like the older you get, the more you're not going to withstand these punches, and then might be a time that you won't get up. But we'll see what happens. We had this is one of the biggest fights that a lot of people were looking forward to. It was in the middleweight division. It was Khamzat Chimaev versus Gerald GM3 Machar. Wow, guys, I could not wait for this fight. It just ended too soon. It just really ended too soon, but it was so good. Khamzat Chimaev said he was going to smash Jerome Rivera. Jerome Rivera said that he's not going to allow this guy to run through him. Jerome Rivera, he ran through you. He walked him down. Khamzat Chimaev walked him down. Threw a body kick. Started walking him down. Jerome Rivera looks scared. I looked at that video a couple times. He looks scared. And Chimaev was sizing Rivera up. Saw an opening, threw a right hook, dropped him. And I'm like, oh my God. I got up from my seat. I jumped up and I almost fell out of excitement. I was like, wow. In the back of my head, I was like, please don't let, before the bell had rang, I was like, please, I don't want Chimaev losing to Gerald Rivera. If he's to lose to anybody, let it be somebody of a higher talent. If he loses to Rivera, this is going to set him back for like a couple months, maybe even a year, for him to get back to where he was. But wow, the internet exploded. I was like, oh my God, he really did do that. He really did do that. And I was like losing it. Chimaev seems like he's the real deal. He ran through Gerald Rivera, finished the fight in 17 seconds. 17 seconds he finished the fight. These two were talking smack to one another in the press conference, saying that, why is he a black belt? He loses all the time. Rivera is like, he's a black belt for a reason. He has the most submission he's tied for the most submission finishes in the UFC. And Khamzat that night was like, I'm gonna smash you, I'm gonna smash you, I'm gonna smash you. Let alone he smashed him. So now what do you do with Khamzat Chimaev? I mean, this guy fights at two different weight classes. One week will be, middleweight at 185. Another week will be at 170 for the welterweight, division. I mean, what do you do? I mean, do you cancel the Damian Maia fight? Because Dana White was already talking about that he had him double booked for Damian Maia. And I don't know. I mean, does he go to Fight Island? We go to fight. The UFC goes to Fight Island, what's it called? This Saturday coming up. It's going to be headlined by Israel Otasania versus Polo Costa for the middleweight title. But what do you do with Khamzat Chimaev? I mean, I don't know. I was thinking about it earlier that the UFC should probably, have Chimaev face Brad Tavares. I think he's like ranked 14. He's somewhere in the top 15. Have him face Brad Tavares. From there, move on forward. But in the middleweight division, I mean, they had already scheduled him for Damian Maia. Damian Maia is already older, but he's one of the best jiu-jitsu, fighters in the world that has ever stepped foot into the octagon. This guy's a wizard when it comes to making submissions. I don't know. If I'm Dana White, there's a lot of questions being asked right now. I would want to be a fly on the wall when he's having those matchmaking meetings with Mick Maynard, Sean Shelby, Hunter. I want to know what's being said because it's really hard at this point. The more he keeps on winning, the more that hype keeps on building. Some reporter yesterday ended up saying, do you have him fight, Leon Edwards? I personally would like to see that. I mean, Leon Edwards only wants to fight in England. He could possibly get, a visa to go to Abu Dhabi and Yas Island. But we'll see. It's really, really exciting. If you're a Khamzat Chimaev fan, It's a lot of excitement. There's a lot of possibilities. There's a lot of matchmaking possibilities you can do. Who knows what's going to happen? As for Gerald Mearshart, it's very unfortunate what happened. You know, you prepped so hard for this fight to get knocked down in 17 seconds. Hopefully he's okay. But man, that one punch, I mean, I didn't expect him to have that type of power. I mean, I saw the wrestling style that he has. I saw the way he dominates. Now that he has boxing too, like this guy looks like he might be unbeatable. This guy might be like the second coming of Khabib. Just have your weight. But yeah, that was crazy. That was really crazy to see last night. And if anybody saw that, you know, wow. We had a women's strawweight fight between Mackenzie Dern and Rhonda Marcos, and Mackenzie Dern is the real deal in the strawweight division. I don't know what Rhonda Marcos was doing. The fight started. You know, the fight only lasted till the first round. But yeah, Mackenzie Dern tries to go for a leg sweep, you know, or a calf kick, whatever it was, loses her balance. She falls to the floor. Rhonda Marcos is like, oh, maybe I should try to, you know, jump on top of her. Never do that because of the fact that it looks like Mackenzie Dern looks like she is one of the best fighters on the ground. And that was like the worst mistake ever. All right. That is like you trying to jump on top of a python. And Mackenzie Dern is that python. Looked like she was going to get into an arm bar here and there. Slipped out of it. Her jiu-jitsu is pure great. I mean, I haven't seen much. I haven't seen better jiu-jitsu in a women's fighter since I can remember. But yeah, this girl Mackenzie Dern. I think ever since she had her baby, ever since she gave birth, she looks more motivated than ever before. You know, she looks fantastic. Yesterday, fighting Rhonda Marcos, you know, sets up the submission. You know, it looked like she was going to go for like a guillotine or like the Gogo Plata. Sets that up into an arm bar. Doesn't get it well. Goes, you know, was doing hammer fist. You know, hammer fist to the body, hammer fist to the face. You know, loud thuds. Just to set up the arm bar, and she like cranked up the arm as high as possible that she could as she tucked it in underneath her armpit. It was beautiful. I mean, like I said, I haven't seen, you know, a better jiu-jitsu fighter in the women's strawweight division that I could personally remember. But yeah, that was really, really good. Congratulations to Mackenzie Dern. I mean, who knows what's going to happen here? I mean, she's definitely going to climb up the rankings come Tuesday. As for Rhonda Marcos, I mean, you got 10 wins, 10 losses. It doesn't look very well for you. And yes, she is a veteran at this point. What do you do with Rhonda Marcos? I mean, she looks like she's most likely going to end up going back to the prelims. But yeah, Mackenzie Dern looked amazing. We also had a fight between Johnny Walker and Ryan Spann. Wow. So Johnny Walker came back from had a 2-fight losing streak, lost back in March in Brazil. And then also lost, I forgot who he ended up fighting. I can't remember exactly. And ended up fighting Corey Anderson back in November. Ryan Spann, undefeated in the UFC. And I was like, seeing Johnny Walker train with Kevin Kavanaugh, you know, Conor McGregor's coach, training with Conor McGregor's camp. I'm like, all right, so Walker wants to cut up his like crazy antics, more focused on fighting. If he's more focused on fighting, he's going to become a better fighter, obviously. This guy looks like he's naturally gifted. He could actually do some work in the light heavyweight division. Ryan Spann, tough guy, you know, hits hard. And, you know, going into the fight, I'm thinking, all right, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if Ryan Spann ends up, you know, knocking out Johnny Walker. You know, going for a takedown and then doing ground and pound. Looks like he was originally trying to do that, but Johnny Walker, great takedown defense. You know, gets tackled to the octagon. You know, holds himself up, and then starts going for his mean grounded pound. Through a vicious elbow right to the side of the head. That elbow looked ridiculous. Staggered Ryan Spann, threw another one, and then just started like clubbing at him right at the jaw a couple times. fight was over. Johnny Walker finally gets himself out of his losing streak. Ryan Spann loses for the first time as a member of the UFC, and now Ryan Spann might drop down to rank 15, while Johnny Walker might drop inside the top 10. So we'll see what happens. Who is he going to fight? Be very interesting to see. As for the light heavyweight division, because Johnny Walker, at one point, he had as much hype as Khamzat Chimaev, maybe a little bit less. But at one point, people were talking about how he could possibly fight for a light heavyweight title against John Jones. John Jones, like I said, is no longer in the light heavyweight division. He moved up to heavyweight, earlier in the month. So it should be very, very interesting to see, what happens. I'm sorry, he ended up moving up last month, not September. But yeah, so if I'm looking at the standings right now, Ryan Spann was ranked 12. Walker was ranked number 11. You can have. Do you have Johnny Walker fight Anthony Smith? Anthony Smith has come off another loss. He ended up facing what's his name? Alexander Rakic. Spann might drop down to like I said, number 15. Does he fight Paul Craig? If he ends up winning his match, or do you have Ryan Spann fight Shogun? So you get himself back into the win column. But getting back to Walker, you could have him face Anthony Smith. You could have him face Volkan Otasania too. There's a little bit more options he could throw at Johnny Walker, because he'll be most likely inside the top 10 after having his first round finish over Ryan Spann. And lastly, in the main card, we had Kevin Holland versus Darren the Dentist Stewart. I think this should have been, if they should have been a fight of the night, this should have been it. Reason why? From the very start, you had high paced, high action. I was at the edge of my seat. Every hit sounded like a loud thud. You had Kevin Holland, since there's no fans, you hear everything that the guys are saying. You hear Kevin Holland saying, "God damn, you're strong. Strong like a motherfucker." And I started laughing because you hear everything like that. And I think it's pretty cool, You could hear what these fighters are saying. You could hear the trash talk. You hear the coaches, saying, coaching up their fighters. So round one, Kevin Holland, leg kicks, ended up throwing punch combinations. His boxing looked stellar. Throwing side kicks too. Darren Stewart was going for the oblique kicks, going for the knee stomps. Ended up catching Kevin Holland more than a couple of times on the chin. I'm surprised he didn't go down at any point. Kevin Holland has a strong chin. If you heard any of those loud thuds, wow. The normal person would have been down. But these two, since they can endure that type of pain, my chin would be hurting right now. If I was to ever experience the amount of punches that these two experienced last night. So yeah, Kevin Holland ended up controlling the pace in the first round, throwing more punches, throwing more volume, landing more significant power shots over Darren Stewart. Darren Stewart was more leg targeting, and he had the good game plan, going for the lead leg, knee stomping, calf kicking, and it was setting Darren Stewart up for the second round. So he gave up a round to go after the next two. So round two, Darren Stewart is knee stomping. He is attacking the legs, throwing punch combinations. Kevin Holland looks like he's getting a little bit wimpy on his lead leg. I forgot how at one point, I believe it was a takedown defense. Got denied of a takedown. Kevin Holland's on the floor. He's on his back. And it was one of the weirdest things I've ever seen. Darren Stewart ends up elbowing the bottom of Kevin Holland's foot. So I've never seen that happen before. I don't know what that really does. Is that going to really hurt Kevin Holland, his balance? Is it going to make him not wanting to put so much pressure on the bottom of his foot? I don't know, but I don't even think the judges actually scored that as a significant strike. It was really weird. I've never seen that happen before, but very creative. I mean, maybe fighters might do that later on in the future. But yeah, Stewart would elbow the bottom of Holland's foot and the kick in the back of Holland's thighs. And Holland looked very, very, very wimpy on his lead leg. I was very surprised to see that. Had Kevin Holland, ended up beating up Hernandez earlier in the year, ended up knocking out Joaquin Buckley. And, this fight, his third fight, he actually was put to the test versus Darren Stewart. Amazing fight. And Darren Stewart ends up winning round 2. Round 3 was very, very, very close. These boys were swinging at it. Left, right combinations, back and forth. Hooks here, uppercut here. These boys just wanted to get the win. Darren Stewart was attacking more of the lead leg. Kevin Holland was very precise, may have thrown less punches, but was very accurate. Was very pinpoint accurate on his punches. They were all meeting, the chin, the side of the face, and what's it called? Stewart attacking more of the lead leg. Lead leg was wimpy, like I said earlier. And it came down to the judges' scorecard. One judge had Stewart winning. Another judge had Holland winning. And then the third judge had Holland winning 29-28. I was just like, wow, that's ridiculous. I actually had Darren Stewart winning the fight. Kevin Holland ended up telling Dana White that he wants to run it back because he felt like he didn't win the fight. Dana was like, you don't make that decision. I don't make that decision. That's the judge's decision. Who says that wins the fight and who loses the fight. If these two were to fight, please make it on a pay-per-view. That was great. Whoever were the matchmakers for that fight, whoever decided that these two needed to fight, kudos to you guys because you guys did a great job, picking the fight. Like I said earlier, I felt like Nico Price, Donald Cerrone was going to be fight of the night. If they had to make a decision on who was fight of the night, and I don't know why they never chose a fight of the night for yesterday's card, that would have been the easiest and most obvious choice. Wow. I mean, that was one of the better fights that I've seen in the last couple weeks by the UFC. And we had some prelims. I mean, you had Jordan Espinosa versus David Dorick. That went to decision. David Dorick was the winner. Featherweight division, we had Damon Jackson versus Machar Beholdich. Damon Jackson, one of the few fighters to walk away with $50,000 in bonuses. He ends up pulling out the submission in round 3. 1:21 into round 3. Women's flyweight, Mayra Buenasilva versus Mara Romero Borella. Mayra ends up pulling the submission in the first round. 2 minutes and a half into the first round, pulls out the submission over Mara Borella. Friday, she had a weigh-in, and she was trying to scare Mara. She was like, boo, right? And ends up scaring the wrong person. Ends up scaring Dana White. If you can see that video, go on ESPNMMA.com. Go on Instagram, go to ESPN MMA. You'll see what I'm talking about. Scares Dana White. Dana White was the only ones to flinch in that video. It was completely hilarious. Maybe I thought it was only hilarious, but yeah. Yeah. So then we had a women's bantamweight fight between Jessica Rose Clark versus Sarah Alfer. Jessica Rose Clark ends up winning by TKO in round 3. And we also had a fight, between Derek Minner versus TJ Laramie for the featherweight division at 145. I had TJ Laramie winning in his UFC debut, but very, very, very disappointed to see TJ Laramie get submitted so quickly by Derek Minner. I want to see Laramie bounce back from this. Laramie, Yeah, no, that was really disappointing seeing Laramie end up submitting and tapped out to Minner in the first round. We need to see Laramie back because kid looks good. Kid looks good. We also had a fight in the bantamweight division at 135. Wow, Randy Costa versus Randy Costa. I mean, the UFC said, look out for these few fighters, and Randy Costa was one of them. Wow, Randy Costa, what a knockout. What a knockout. Put Journey Newsom to sleep, man. Put him to sleep. Wow. That boy walked out with $50,000 extra in his pocket. Well deserved. Wow. If you guys get the chance, please watch that fight. Only lasted 41 seconds, but it was really good. Obviously, if Hazma Shemaya versus Jerome Rivera never happened, Randy Costa will be getting a lot more love than Hazma Shemaya. Then we had Andre Ewell versus Erwin Rivera. Very good fight. Erwin Rivera, came out aggressive. Andre Ewell, the more dominant fighter, landing more significant punches, throwing more volume. Ewell just couldn't get what he wanted. The game plan didn't work for him. Andre Ewell came out the winner by decision. And the first fight of the night was Tyson Nam versus Jerome Rivera. Jerome Rivera, another fighter from Dana White's Contender Series, making his UFC debut. Tyson Nam, really took him to school. Knocked him out. Would have been a good test for Jerome Rivera, but Jerome Rivera needs to go back down to the drawing board and seeing what he needs to fix up. Thought he should have thrown a little more leg kicks, and I felt like he was maybe a little bit too nervous going into his first fight. But yeah, so Tyson Nam knocking him out. We'll see what happens, next for Jerome Rivera. Felt like Jerome Rivera could have had a really good chance of making a name for himself in the bantamweight division versus Tyson Nam. Tyson Nam, a veteran, but we'll see what happens. But yeah, overall, if I had to give a grade for that UFC fight night, from top to bottom, it gets diminished a little bit, only because of the fact that the main event wasn't, as great as I thought it should be. But I will have to give it an A-. An A- is a good grade score for yesterday's card, only because of the fact that it had the potential of being a solid A+. It could have been, 10s going across the board, but no, didn't happen that way. But yeah, the fight night was incredible. Could have been a pay-per-view if they wanted to. They could have put some of these fights in last night's card into Abu Dhabi for Costa and Otasania for their pay-per-view. But yeah, it was ridiculous. But like I said before, it is what it is. We have fights going on for this Saturday in Abu Dhabi between Israel Adesanya and Polo Costa. They'll be fighting in Fight Island, Yaz Island in Abu Dhabi. That fight will be the pay-per-view will start at 10 o'clock. The prelims will start as early. It's going to be, as of right now, Danilo Marquez versus Cadiz Agabrevito. Second fight will be Jeff Hughes versus Juan Espinino. Then you have William Knight, who is on the Dana White Contender Series, so we should be excited to see him versus Alexis Kamor. William Knight is 8-1. Alexa Kamor is 6-0 as of right now. Shane Young versus Ludwig Klein. If I said his name correctly. Then we have Diego Sanchez sighting. Diego Sanchez in the welterweight division is going to be fighting Jake Matthews. That should be interesting. I feel like Diego Sanchez has been picking it up a little bit in his more recent fights, but we'll see what happens. And the feature prelim is going to be Brad Riddle versus Alex da Silva Coelho. That should be interesting. And for the main card, you're going to have Hakeem Mean Dawada versus Saberio Tugava. Hakeem Dawada has been saying that he doesn't want to fight no more on the first fight of the night in the prelims. So they finally put him onto the main card. We'll see if he deserves to stick on to the main card. Next, you're gonna have Caitlin Variedia versus Sahira Eubanks, who recently just fought. Next, you're gonna have Kai Kara France, and it's gonna be an amazing fight right there. Circle that fight because that should be interesting. Brandon Royval looked stellar in his last fight. Next, you're gonna have for the vacant light heavyweight title, Dominick Reyes versus Jan Beholdich. That's gonna be a good fight. We'll see what happens. Is Dominick Reyes gonna repeat the same, Dominick Reyes that we saw back in February versus, John Jones? Is Jan Beholdich gonna pick up from what he did to Corey Anderson earlier on earlier in the year? And then next, lastly, the main event, Israel Otasania versus Polo Costa. Dana White says that might be fight of the year. I don't know if it'll be fight of the year, but we all got to watch. Me personally, I'm rooting for Polo Costa. I want to see him win the title. I think it'll be huge for Brazil. I think he might be a mega superstar. We'll see what happens. It might even humble up Israel Adesanya. But yeah, we'll see. Kind of favor Izzy in that fight over Costa, but it's the fight game. Anything can happen. But until then, guys, that'll conclude for this episode in Flav Orellana's MMA show. I'm your host, Flav Orellana. All right, guys, stay safe. All right, have a good night, guys.